Well, Donna, thanks for that talk, and I also want to just thank the organizers for this great conference. University of Waterloo, we're known for innovation, we're known for technologies, but Donna has reminded us in her talk of the importance of fundamental research. And as you noted, the paper was published over 30 years before your Nobel Prize, and I think I've heard you say the first 5 years there weren't too many citations, right?
Exactly. Yeah,
So,
by all the metrics, it wasn't popular.
So, and I really want to emphasize the point that Donna made that, because we have a lot of universities here, we're talking about education, we're talking about technology development, industry partnerships, and that's important. That's what we're known for at the University of Waterloo, but we don't have those innovations developing without fundamental research. And so I thank you for making that point in this audience. But maybe rather than talking about photonics for a minute, I want to ask you about something that I know you're very passionate about. And you're part of a new interdisciplinary group at the University of Waterloo to promote trust. Can you say a little bit about that and why you got involved?
So this is it started with a conversation with Mary Wells, who is probably here somewhere. Yeah. I know she's here. Yeah. And the Dean of Engineering. And we were just talking about things that I'd be interested in. And I said, one of the things, and especially, this is probably even the conversation before COVID, but I was already worried about how we have lost our appreciation for what scientists do. I think it used to be that scientists were held up, and in certain parts of the world, and I think Asia is actually the one part in the world where scientists are still really held up in high esteem. And I don't know whether it's because it's being politicized or what, we've started to lose that. And now, I guess probably before COVID, I was worried just about climate change and the way you would hear people talk about climate change, but certainly then vaccine hesitancy started to be very politicized. And there's nothing about your health that should really be politicized. So I just thought scientists have to start fighting back. So Trust is our new network that we're starting at the University of Waterloo for trust in research undertaken. We got to get the U in there. Undertaken in science and technology.
Yeah. And you're working with a number of different disciplines in that.
Yes. Right. And the reason so it's not. A lot of people would say that we scientists aren't good communicators, and so that's part of the problem, is that we don't know how to communicate, and I'm not saying that's not true, but that's only one part of it. Because, Dr. Fauci, people would say, was a great communicator, and yet in the United States, there were still an awful lot of people that didn't really like what he said, so they didn't want to believe what he said. And so it's not just about how good we can communicate, but we do have people from English going to help us become better communicators, but also learn what types of communication work better. But we need people also in psychology and the social sciences to help figure out what is it that keeps people from wanting to believe science and how you could politicize it and just what the emotional thing is. I do want it to be a scientific endeavor, though, so I want us to really look at what we're going to try from a psychological point of view or social science point of view, and have data before and data after to say we are moving the needle or not moving the needle. But yes, and we hopefully will have all 6 of our faculty involved. Math, because AI is certainly one of the things coming up that people are worried about. Health sciences, the arts, science and engineering are already there, and I'm missing something. And math, did I always say math?
Math.
Yeah, we're going to have all 6.
Involves everyone. We were just
environment, that's the one I did.
We were chatting at lunch about some of the challenges in communications as a public health physician. I lived that through COVID, and certainly look forward to this work. And again, I wanted to start with that because it highlights another important role that universities play in being able to bring people from a broad range of disciplines together to work on important problems. And it's great to have a scientist like you helping drive that. Another general question before we get into photonics is, every time I see you, you're smiling and you're optimistic. And yet, the world is such a miserable place. And we've had many of the topics at this conference, the climate crisis, conflicts in so many parts of the world, the misinformation, disinformation, populism. There's just so many bad things happening in the world. What keeps you so optimistic?
Well, first of all, I think I'm naturally optimistic and naturally happy, but I do think, and so, you know, one of the things that I get asked a lot about is women in STEM, and I always like to point out how far we've come. And so as long as there's always people struggling, we do usually keep moving forward. And one of the examples that I give, you know, is the second woman to win the Nobel Prize in physics, and I'm going to San Diego later this year. I mean, when she won, first of all, I'll tell you that she followed her husband, who was also a scientist, and she sometimes got paid to be a secretary and allowed to then use her office to do her science. But she didn't get paid until she was like in her 50s to be a scientist. And it was during that time, at least she was being paid when she did her Nobel Prize winning work. But she was this amazing scientist who started this whole new field when she was in grad school and yet couldn't get paid as a woman. Now she had left Argonne where she did her Nobel Prize winning work. She's now a professor at the University of San Diego when she wins her Nobel Prize. And the headline in the newspaper is, "San Diego housewife wins the Nobel Prize." So luckily, they did not say Waterloo housewife wins the Nobel Prize when I won. So I do want to point out that we have to always remember that things are improving. Obviously, they could always get better.
So you mentioned in your talk about working with someone from France, Canadian, in a US lab when you did this work. Can you talk a little bit, we're at a Canada and Asia conference, the importance of partnerships and collaborations across the globe between different types of organizations and how that influences the flow of science?
Well, I think we need collaborations, and you want to get the best minds working on projects, so you want to get them from around everywhere. There's the other added thing that science is expensive. And so a lot of scientific endeavors, whether it's the CERN, where high energy physics is done now almost totally in Geneva, and places from around the world come there to use that big facility. My astro colleagues, I know, have to really all come together and collaborate from around the world to say, you know, our telescopes that are now out on satellites cost a lot of money. How do we do it? So there's a lot of different reasons why we have to collaborate, but sometimes it's just the fact that, you know, you might have this little idea, you go to an international conference and somebody else has the partner idea that just sparks something that really works better. And so we have to be open, and we should try not to politicize science and be very open about where we do science.
We could take that conversation
a whole other place,
we
but
won't go there today.
That's one of our sad, not optimistic time things right now. So.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about where your own research is going and what excites you. What
excites me? So I'm doing a few things, although between COVID and me traveling, it's a little bit harder than it used to be. So I still work in short pulse lasers, and I talked about the particle acceleration, and the person who invented particle acceleration back in the 70s, before we had the lasers to do it, is Toshi Tajima. And so he's in California now. He called me and said, you know, I'd love to work with you, and I'm building fiber lasers now, which are sort of lower power, but still intense. And we're going to try to do particle acceleration for radiation treatment, but not at the really highest powers. We're going to try to, at the end of a fiber, have a nanotube accelerator, and it would go right onto the tumor. And the idea is you would cut the tumor away, but leave that last micron, because sometimes the surgeons have to cut too deep, and that causes different problems. So I'll have nothing to do with the surgery part, because I am very squeamish. It took a long time before I could watch that video. So I'm really only going to develop the laser for, if I can, we'll try to develop the laser that can have that intensity. The trick, this is what the trick is, how to have the intensity outside the fiber on the nanotubes, but not be melting the fiber just before that. But we have some ideas. And I was just in Germany, where they're also working on a similar idea, and so we might collaborate with the Germans as well. That's the main thing.
And how did you get so involved in health projects? You got the eye project, and
I had not, okay. So I show the eye project, and apparently that's why I won the Nobel Prize, because of that. But I had nothing to do with that. Okay, I just want to say that I had nothing to do with that. But again, we want to talk about serendipity and where ideas come from. It really was the fact that titanium doped sapphire lasers became all the rage in the 90s. And it's really how come CPA got so popular, and I won't really go into that, but anyway, with my laser, it was 1 micron. We kept our laser goggles on. You couldn't see the infrared light with or without your goggles, so you might as well stay safe. But the titanium sapphire was mostly in the infrared, but it was so broad, it would get to where you could see it. And people started taking their goggles off because it was easier to line it up. And it looked like a very weak beam, but unfortunately it was very intense. And eye damage started to get to be a problem. And one of Gerard's students got the laser in his eye, which the first thing that apparently happens is your eye fills with blood, kind of scary. And so Gerard took the student to the local ophthalmologist to have it looked at. And it was a young intern or resident at the time. And he came out and said, what kind of laser was that caused the damage? And I guess the poor kid was going, what does it matter? Just fix my eye. But the ophthalmologist was stunned because up until then, even if it was CW laser damage, it was thermal and it would be a tear. And this was perfect round damage, which is the same reason you can machine it. And so he said, what kind of laser would cause that perfect round damage? And so he and Gerard started talking, and that's where this idea came from.
What happened to the graduate student?
He got to come to Sweden with Gerard, and he's okay. The thing is, your brain, again, just remained a small piece of damage, and apparently your brain can eventually erase that. So the retina was still dead, but your brain doesn't notice it, apparently. And it was only a tiny round piece of damage.
All in the interest of science.
I keep my goggles on when I'm at the lab, yeah.
Talk about how you work with students and what excites you about students.
The best part about teaching graduate students, I'll tell you, is when they teach you back, right? This is when you know a PhD student's really ready to go, is when they're really teaching you the project better than you can explain things to them. So I think that's the fun part. And I talk about this to a lot of younger scientists, that people think that science is just you by yourself trying to think things out, and I keep saying, no, it's a team sport. You really have to have these conversations to figure things out, and so it is from these conversations about how things are either working in the lab or what your idea might be, where you take it off each other and make something happen.
So you've been traveling around the world visiting pretty well every country now?
Not quite, but I'm good. I haven't got to Africa yet.
Okay.
Got to get to Africa.
We can get you there.
Okay.
Let's go.
I know. I'm waiting. It's on my bucket list. I'm telling you.
So in terms of the theme of this conference, like, what advice do you have in terms of how does Canada and Asia work together better?
Oh, well, how does Canada and Asia work better together? You know, unfortunately, the distance is a problem. I'm going to just tell you that. But certainly, I think there's a lot of collaborations between them. I certainly have got a lot of colleagues in China. I have a fair number of colleagues in South Korea. I do not have colleagues here in Singapore, so I should try to find one. I sit on a board with the former president of the university here, but I emailed him and said, I'm finally coming to Singapore, and he goes, I'll be gone. I went, okay, well. He's gone home to the US. So I think it's just, again, we have to have conversations like this. I think it is the more we bring people together, the more ideas get sparked, and the more things can happen together.
And in terms of other applications that you see coming with photonics in the 21st century?
Well, I would really like far more in the environment. Okay, so this is one of the things that I am pushing with Optica. I am, I guess, now in charge of their push for global environmental measurement and monitoring. I think there's a lot to be done there. And I want to say that this is not only a collaboration that we're trying to bring together these disparate kinds of science, but we also want our political leaders there at the same time. Because I want, political leaders to make good choices in how to help the environment. And I want them at the table telling the scientists what they want to try so that we figure out what the measurements should be done before and after to make sure that there weren't unintended consequences, that it really did do what they said it would do. I want a scientific approach done on that as well.
And do you see applications besides measurement in the environment?
Well, of course, like I said, science is everywhere. So I think it'll be just more and more and more. Because, yes, it doesn't matter. I know more in all the areas of physics. And actually, I visited CERN a few years back and said, you know, optics has been everywhere. We probably started because of astronomy, right? I mean, I would say the original sort of optics was the fact that people wanted telescopes to watch astronomy. We're then in communications, we're in medicine, we're all the things that we said. I said the one area of physics we hadn't gotten into is high energy physics, but we want to do particle acceleration, and we even want to beat CERN eventually. So we want to be everywhere.
Can you do fusion energy?
Well, okay, so they've broken scientific break-even. Finally, this is one of those areas that was always 20 years in the future. I love this because there's a lot of conversation about fusion energy right now because an awful lot of people are investing money in it, and you get very different opinions about whether that's a good investment or not. But yes, I have great faith that we're going to have laser fusion, hopefully in my lifetime.
With your lasers?
Well, the one that's getting a lot of business interest is using CPA lasers. And I'm keeping an open mind about whether it works. It is 6 orders of magnitude behind the type that just saw scientific break-even. On the other hand, it's got some advantages if it works. But whether that one happens in my lifetime, we'll see.
But you're optimistic.
I'm optimistic.
Great. Okay, well, I think that's a great point to end on. And thank you very much for your great conversation and your great talk.
Thanks, Philip.